Hello. Hello.
Hello.
And welcome back, my unhinged crew. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Maddie.
And you're here with Therapist Unhinged Podcast, episode 3.
Episode 3.
Whoop, whoop.
With 2 licensed professional counselors.
That is us.
But not your licensed professional counselors, because this is not a therapy session.
Correct. Our therapy session, not yours.
Right.
Because we are going to actually be talking about a very, very fun topic today, too. So you're going to hear a lot from us and kind of our perspectives on it. But yeah, you're here with the Saying No is a Love Language episode, but it's going to be 2 parts today. So we're going to dip your toe in and then leave you hanging and wanting more.
Wanting to know the resolution.
It's
Right.
okay. You will only have to wait a week
Yes.
for the next episode. So
Yes.
don't you worry. We're actually being very proactive too. Like we're recording so ahead of time.
We are. Episode 3 and we're going strong.
I know. I'm patting myself on the back for that. I feel like we're into it. I feel like we love, we come over on a Sunday after going out on a Saturday.
Yeah.
We like this.
We do. Yeah, we put this, we prioritize this, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a good thing. I really feel like we put our hearts into this. And even if that means we're a little messy when we do it, a little chaotic, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm in sweatpants and makeup right now.
And I'm wearing my eyelashes from last night. So
They look great.
thank you.
I think like with the camera angle, like that probably just works.
Can you see them? Can you hear them?
Can you hear them? It's like a butterfly's wings flapping.
Giving you butterfly
Did that
kisses.
cause a storm in another country? What is that? Chaos effect? Chaos theory?
Chaos theory.
I don't know. I'm going. Someone fact check me with that.
Anyways.
I will say fact checking. It's so funny, like listening to our podcast like over and hearing ourselves talk, and then I'm always like, I mispronounced that, or I totally used that word wrong. It's like I'm being hypercritical right now.
Right.
Stop it, Taylor.
Yeah, I would listen to it and then just kind of be like, I don't care in the end.
Feedback has been so good.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys just obviously being here for round 3.
Yeah, sticking around, letting us figure out the kinks, giving us more than 1 or 2 chances to catch your attention.
I guess if this is 3rd time, or it's like strike out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine you'd be listening to us again if you're just constantly thinking like, shut up, shut up.
Well, you're back on the green couch with your licensed professional counselors. And we're, like I said, going over a topic that is so important. And I know I say that every time. Every thing we talk about is important.
It's true.
But I will say this is more, I think, normal. It needs to be more normalized. And this is one that in society today, we can use it every single avenue of your life, internally, relationships, work dynamics, everything. So I think it just can be a tool that we use a lot more often than we do right now. And that's even as therapists. So I hope on this journey with you, Maddie, I can come out a boundary guru. You can come out a boundary guru. And then you guys as well.
Yeah.
So today, I guess we'll kind of dabble into what is a boundary.
Boundaries.
You know what? That's your thing now. I need to figure out what my thing is.
What's my thing?
You're like whispering
I know.
into the mic.
Yeah, when I literally say, I can't say this loud enough, and then I whisper it, and it's not loud at all.
But I feel like you pull my attention every time. I listen to the podcast again, and I'm like,
oh, okay, there it is. Well, I'll whisper this one all day long because this is something I think is super important to not just, obviously, literally, like I said last week, anybody with emotions, right? So again, if you have emotions, this is the right place for you.
Yeah.
But something I've been really working on personally this last year is learning a lot about boundaries and what they are. And I don't think I even really understood what they were or are up until I'm turning 30 now, right?
Yeah.
And I just started learning what a boundary was.
I think we realize we might set them in ways and we didn't realize that's what we were doing. But you talked about like emotions too, and how if you have emotions, if you're feeling emotionally dysregulated, it might be time for boundaries. It might be time to check in with, what's going on around you. And you talked about being 30. We're in our career now.
Right.
And whenever you bring in different identities into yourself, like I think that's when you need to kind of say, do I have boundaries in this new avenue? I mean, I'm in this pretty serious relationship that wasn't around a few years ago.
Right.
I need boundaries for that. Like, it's something that's going to be ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself grace or space for that. Don't
Thank
ever feel,
you.
I was like, don't ever feel like you're, I guess, behind the curve with that.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I think, thank you for saying that. I'm like, oh, that felt good.
Okay.
I feel seen.
Take that weight off your shoulders.
I feel seen. But maybe let's tell you guys what a boundary even
Yeah.
is, right? Like, what is a boundary?
I'm already going off on my tangents.
No. This is how we do this. We take little circles and corners and roundabouts throughout this journey, you know?
But we'll always circle back.
We always come back to you guys.
So I guess I guess short and sweet version of what I would say a boundary is it's what is okay for you and what is not okay with you, and kind of setting those parameters, those invisible lines, and kind of sketching them out for yourself in your relationships, like I said, in your jobs. But I guess to be a little bit more specific, it is things that we set up for ourselves to help support our emotional well-being, our physical well-being, spiritual well-being,
social well-being.
right,
Right.
mental health. So a lot of different areas in our lives, like I said, but it's ways that we negotiate what we are okay with.
Right. So envision like a big, bulky, buff bouncer coming up in front of me and Taylor. We each have our own, right? Right?
ID ready.
ID's ready, and they protect our peace for us. And what they do is they don't let everybody have VIP access to our hearts and our souls.
Our headspace.
Our headspace, everything. Our with our spatial awareness, everything.
Are you in my bubble
Are
right
you
now?
in my bubble? Are you in my personal space?
I kind of want a bouncer now.
Right? Imagine that you've got a little bouncer friend. That is your boundaries. They're just protecting you. They're keeping the good vibes, the good shit nice and close, and then the chaos outside.
That analogy.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
I won't lie and say that I didn't maybe ask ChatGPT for some help there, but
you're like, give me an analogy.
I know. I was like, could I have an analogy of how to like make boundaries feel more relatable?
Yeah, that actually. Well, I literally saw it. I'm like, the little pit bull inside of me.
I'm very
we always talk about our little people pleaser on this shoulder. Maybe we have our little bouncer is what we can label.
By the end of this, we're gonna have so many parts just chilling on this couch with us.
We're gonna have a lot of stuff people on our shoulder.
I know. I mean, maybe the bouncer stays right there, in front.
Yeah. Well, I think that, like I said, great analogy and great kind of segue into what like is going to be talked about today. So with that kind of definition and how we define it, why has it been so hard for us to set these things? Why has it been so difficult for us to lean in and have that bouncer for ourselves? Or to just be focused in on our well-being and making adjustments into dynamics that we have.
Yeah.
So I think we can talk on how it's been hard. And I think we brought it up a little bit, that people pleaser.
She doesn't like boundaries.
Yeah, she doesn't like to disappoint people.
She does. She's scared of rejection.
She doesn't like conflict.
She fears abandonment.
Oh.
Yeah.
That one made me sweat.
I know.
That one made me sweat. Oh my goodness. No, I agree. I think that a lot of the times, I will even say there's a dynamic with like women that obviously have kind of this not having a voice or kind of being, more subdued. So boundary setting is, I will say, a lot harder, I think, for women.
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
going to just, state that fact. But I think it's obviously not just for like women in general. It's obviously men and, everyone involved.
Yeah.
But I will say, as a woman, I feel like I had this don't stir conflict, blend in, don't bring attention to yourself mentality a lot in my relationships, a lot in my family dynamics. And I think those are ways it's been an issue, because sometimes family dynamics kind of create an inability to set boundaries, or you've seen your parents not set boundaries, or you don't have a good example of it. And then also in a job setting, in a relationship, as you're first navigating it, I think we get into relationships too where maybe you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you are being manipulated and you don't know how to get into this realm. I think there's just a lot of areas that have made it very difficult for setting boundaries or fostering healthy
Oh,
boundaries.
absolutely. And the current like temperament of the world right now, boundaries are not boundaries do not feel like an easy thing to maintain right
Yeah.
now. I don't actually, if I just look at like this country in general right now without, I'm obviously not going to get into like politics and
Yeah.
stuff like that, but I just look at the country and I'm like, does this country have boundaries? Like, does anybody have boundaries?
I mean, technically, we do have state lines.
Where are the boundaries? Where is the, anyway, that's just a completely blanket statement for like just society, the world, humanity.
Yeah.
Right now, just everything feels off.
I agree.
Yeah. And then
I think to that point, I'll let, sorry,
No,
I didn't
go.
want- I'll let you finish that point, but I will say this. I talked about it earlier. There's so much new things coming in, and then we leave them unchecked.
Right.
We leave them boundary set, like for ourselves. I think about social media coming in and us always reflecting on kids these days with that, and like having those things that we didn't necessarily have, and parents boundary setting with their kids. Like that wasn't even a thing for me back when I was a child. So I think too, like that point is we're constantly having new things come in, new stimuli, new needs, new wants, new politics, new laws, new, everything. And you talking about like, hey, I'm 30.
Yeah.
Like we're in a different stage of our lives now.
Right.
I mean, I'm like thinking like marriage track of like my life.
Yeah.
What does like my life look like with that? So I think I'm going to say curious about your boundaries. And I think that's kind of that missing component I think that we see in society is that we haven't been doing it. So how is it going to be done now?
Right.
So it starts internally, guys.
Ooh, and yeah, your internals will tell you what's going on externally.
The internals speak.
They speak for what is happening or the climate of your externals, your external life, right?
Hell yeah. Like I talked about earlier, the emotional dysregulation is telling you something's off.
Right.
It's telling you something is kind of wrong. And like, I know you talked about kind of society. You have a lot more, what's the word for it? Oh gosh, I'm blanking. Okay,
That probably doesn't help you think about it.
No, I kind of wanted you to finish the Jeopardy
dang it.
song.
I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
No, accessibility. I think we have this, it has access to us a lot more is kind of where I'm going. I'll figure out the word when I'm re-listening to the podcast again. But we have a lot more access to these news outlets and we see these things, but we're not setting boundaries because we're letting it dysregulate us and we're not doing anything about it.
And that's not to say that the stuff around us is not dysregulated.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like it for sure is, but it doesn't have to be to the degree that I think, I mean, even I'll just speak for myself. Like I have let my own internal dysregulation like ruin my life, like run my life. And the second that I stepped out of, you know what we should have talked about? I would love to talk about. Have you ever heard of the Karpman's triangle?
Yeah.
Okay, well
I haven't used it. It's like back in my day in school.
That's my favorite like experiential piece of work to do recently. Well, we can get into that later. Anyway, we definitely need to talk about that. Mental note.
Writing it down.
Yes, Karpman triangle, which I'll explain later. Where was I going with that? I'm not sure. Oh, dysregulation. When we can finally step out of this triangle that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, the chaos, right? We can step out of how crappy it feels inside and we can realize like, oh, we have some control of this.
Yeah.
Not all. We don't have total control, but there is something that I can do about this.
Like kind of where is your locus of control, being aware, like what do I have the capacity to control? Is it limiting? Like, yes, it's important to stay knowledgeable about what's going on around you. Of course. It's dysregulating me, so maybe I only allow myself to have access to this information 10 minutes out of the day. And when I'm noticing symptoms or dysregulation, put it down.
Right.
Breathe. Take care of yourself on the other end.
Beautiful example. Yeah, like doom scrolling, right? Or like when you're like, God, I've ended up so many times on like TikTok just crying by the end of it because I've somehow landed on like the page where it's talking about dying puppies or something.
Oh
And,
my
and I just
goodness.
keep going and I
Not
keep looking and I'm like, oh, it's so upsetting. I can't
What is
stop.
your algorithm, Maddie?
I don't know. It's just like you like one video and then it just,
that's it.
anyway.
You're
So
done.
yeah. And that's a great example of, let's not go too far ahead of ourselves here. We don't want to give you the secret to this yet, but that's a
next
great
episode.
example of kind of more to come on boundaries and how to kind of, because boundaries are boundaries within ourselves and then boundaries for other people.
Yep.
So you don't even have to set a boundary. Like if you're not ready to set a boundary, like you don't have to. You can start with just yourself.
Internal. I call it kind of the internal shield, internal boundary. Like, what am I letting enter into like your heart space, your head space, where it's like saying, I'm not going to let this affect my well-being. Is what I'm intaking true? Is what I'm intaking relevant? Is, having like that filter. But again, too ahead of ourselves. But back to the things of society having this way of not necessarily checking or promoting boundaries. Family dynamics, I think, is one of the biggest ones. Like, I think I touched on, if we don't see it happening, with how we grew up, it's really hard to kind of have that knowledge. You think about like, what is a healthy relationship? If you didn't see it growing up, you don't necessarily have the tools to kind of navigate that in older life. So I think it's the same thing. If we don't see it in our home, if we don't see it being done effectively, it's hard to kind of gather that. And I know that I've seen that with like my patients, within myself too. So along the way, and then relationships is another space. Done with the wrong person, I'm not just talking romantic, but friends as well. Done with the wrong person, you're going to kind of get that pushback. You're going to get that not competitiveness, defensiveness.
Right.
So there's a lot of spaces that just have challenged it and make us kind of not do it, not lean into it. And I'm here to tell you there is another side. And again, we'll get into that next episode.
Right.
I want to.
I know. We want to get
bad.
straight to resolution and the solution, right? But we want to talk about
The subject matter is too important to get into that just yet. We need you to see it.
We need you to see it and kind of learn about it. And maybe taking a pause for yourself right now, beautiful unhinged listener, and ask yourself what or if there is an area in your life right now where you're experiencing a lot of emotional dysregulation around, right? Maybe it's friends, maybe it's family, maybe it's work. There's it, you walk into this space, you walk into this environment and you feel it in your body. It does not feel good.
Yeah.
That's probably somewhere you need to look at lack of boundaries being evident, or how I can set some.
Yeah, because I think we touched on that. You might be doing it and you don't know. Or you might have kind of said a few and it being ignored.
Yeah.
And I think the way it shows up when it's ignored is, distance, kind of being unattached from your emotions, disassociation. There's a lot of different ones. If it's a family dynamic, like I talked about, maybe there's over enmeshment in your family, and that's a sign that there's poor boundary setting within your family dynamic. I think there's a lot of distance, kind of disengaged from people, detachment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other ones.
Yeah, just like being in survival mode,
Yeah,
right?
being in survival mode
Autopilot.
constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different symptoms of ways it can show up, just not that dysregulation. You might think that you're like, I don't need boundaries. I've set up, like, my family's where they need to be. And I was like, you might have a wall built up, and that's not a healthy boundary. Like, so there's the kind of the opposite spectrum. I guess I'll go into this of when you have porous boundaries, which is kind of fluid, not really, don't know what's going on here. That's where it's like, hey, anyone can come into my space. I get dysregulated by people pleasing. I think that's the porous boundaries.
So the bouncer went to lunch.
Yeah, bouncers
never
at
came
lunch
back.
and too many people are in the club and
Right. And it's,
and absorbing all the energy.
exactly. Taking, soul sucking.
And then the opposite side of that is that wall, like, has freaking like a moat with pitchforks and alligators, and no one can enter in. And that's that person who is so detached, so like not letting people in, untrusting. Like, that is that level. So that's the opposite spectrum, which isn't a healthy boundary either. You have an army, not just one bouncer.
So yeah, that's where the bouncers never go to lunch.
Yeah, the bouncer, you're burning out your bouncer.
Your bouncer is going to be resentful to you.
Your bouncer
It's going to need to set some boundaries.
Your bouncer doesn't even have boundaries.
Yeah, your bouncer's just poor guy, poor girl,
so
whatever.
I think when I'm giving you this like spectrum to look at, I'm like, where is your middle ground where it's you keep in tune with it, you let the positive in, and you kind of reflect on the negative and can push it back out, but you're not so closed off, but you're not so open.
Mm.
I guess that's kind of where we're going to eventually take you to, but recognizing if your bouncer's at lunch or recognizing if a whole army's
It's in
in
front
front
of
of you.
you. Right. I think it could be cool to also maybe talk a bit about our own experiences with like boundaries and yeah, which
I was like, okay, let's
boundaries
go.
for a long time made me want to projectile vomit all
Mm.
over myself, the floor,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Well, you bring up the people pleaser a lot, so I can imagine.
I got a big people pleasing part
Mhm.
that for a long time and still struggles today to set boundaries. Didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
Thought that it meant like me setting a boundary. I would rather never sleep and do everything everybody wanted me to do than set a boundary because it
Yeah.
felt so uncomfortable to me.
Yeah.
But that's why I love the title of this, that saying no is a love language, because my dudes,
My
my
guys.
life changed as
Mhm.
soon as I started learning and applying boundaries to my life. And I guess kind of speak on like one area I really struggled with boundaries was friendship.
Yeah. Oh.
I wanted to be everybody's best friend and be their best friend out of all their friends.
Yeah.
I wanted to show up the best. I wanted to do all the things, give the best birthday gifts, show up the most times. And I did for a couple years,
Yeah.
I think, probably from high school to honestly like 2 years ago. But what happened to me was because I was always trying to show up, I was trying to, I was saying yes to everything. I never wanted to say no to a hangout. Like I was giving everything and more that I had. And I never told anybody along the way that it was building up in me.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I had this huge, like, I think the slang term these days is crashing out.
Yeah.
Right. Where I just crashed out. Probably like, I think last year was my crash out. I crashed out. And then I became the worst friend and the type of friend I never wanted to be. I couldn't like reply to people. I, was leaving my messages on read because I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And how hurtful is that to those people?
I would say like I wouldn't necessarily like assume hurtful, but I would say confusing. I could say it could
Yeah.
be like a what's going on because
Well, and my point in saying that without, leaning too far on the side of like, blaming myself,
that's
right?
why I was like
Not going there. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I have a point to that.
Okay.
How hurtful and confusing, I guess is a better word, because I never along the way said anything. And then I'm mad and like, well, these people, and it's like, well, you never said anything, Maddie. That was the expectation I set because I would do it and never tell anyone I had a problem with it. And I don't even think I knew I had a problem with it until I had my little crash out. And this last like couple months have just been like, you know what? I can't do it all. I don't have the energy to do it all. My husband's probably listening to this. Well, he's not listening to it right now, but when he hears
snapping.
this, he's gonna snap because this man is my bouncer. He tries so hard to protect my peace. And I got mad at him for a long time about it, but he was my bouncer before I knew how to have my own.
Yeah.
My point in saying that is just like your girl struggles with boundaries and is learning how to set them. And I can and will say they do work.
Oh yeah.
They are beautiful. It is a love language. I could freaking cry talking about boundaries. And I hope if you don't have a relationship with boundaries that you set boundaries, you learn about it, you get to know boundaries, you freaking go find your bouncer, you sit down, you have coffee with him or her or it, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. No, I love that you talked on, because I will say this, as much as we are saying like boundaries need to be like focused in on, I think that people do have set more boundaries with work, with romantic relationships, but friendships,
It's hard.
I think that's the one that goes like untouched a lot. And I will say, I think that's where I noticed probably the hardest ones I have to set too. And I think my sisters also, because I think I learned growing up like how to kind of start that process for myself. I had to learn because I have like 8 sisters. I have a big family
Yeah.
where that burnout, I think it started happening with my family dynamic first,
Yeah.
where showing up to everyone's games, showing up to everyone's things,
Mm.
showing up in general when living in different cities. And I knew how important showing up was for me,
Yeah.
but it was an expectation I put on myself that no one was necessarily asking me for.
Mm.
But I think it was because I missed it from like people, because I missed my family, and that was something I can just label, and I don't have to like I didn't have to shame myself for not being there. I just had to be clear, like you talked about, not necessarily talking on it or giving them that space of like, hey, driving down to the valley is too much for me this weekend, like I can't do it.
Yeah.
Instead of dwelling on it, waiting till the last minute to say like no. So it's just being very clear like from the beginning, and I had to kind of learn that, I will say, in my like early 20s with my
Yeah.
family, because splitting Christmases, splitting holidays, oh my gosh. And it's still like an ongoing process, because you add more into the fold when you date someone, and yeah, that's holidays, we'll get
Yeah.
another
I
time.
can relate. Like, yeah, I relate.
Yeah. And I will say I started to get better with that. Romantic relationships, it was kind of trial and error. Like I think I learned what worked for me, what didn't work for me. But I also had to realize too that sometimes boundaries can disguise themselves, making sure you're not trying to control people with your boundaries. You can't change people, period. But
Mm-hmm.
you can tell them like, this is kind of what's happening. And if this is something you can't provide for me, I need to kind of assess what my next steps are, if I can move through, like if I need to adjust my boundary, or if I'm like, hey, this relationship's not for me.
I love that you said that, because that is, I think, the biggest mistake people make in boundary settings is setting a boundary, then not holding firm to it,
Yeah.
and then expecting something
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. And I'm just always like, I'm not everything's black and white. So I'm like always like gray area. Like, am I willing to negotiate my boundary? Am I not? Am I needing to say like, this isn't for me?
Right.
And you being okay with that, because what you're doing is you're loving yourself along
Mhm.
that way. So I did learn kind of that more. And again, like I said, it takes a lot whenever you can separate, like you're not controlling people, you can't change people.
Yeah.
I will say that the most when it comes to these relationship dynamics and setting boundaries. But the friend one and like my sisters are still like a big part of this one too.
Well, I'm sure they're like your best friends
Yeah,
too,
they
right?
are. Yeah, exactly. So it is this level of, I think with my sisters, like growing up, I always wanted to be there for them, always wanted to kind of show up to those things. And I have a hard time like saying no to them. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I need to get to this level of give and take and finding a balance with them, because eventually I could find that resentment. They're
Mhm.
not kids anymore.
Yeah.
I used to be like bend over, like hand and foot for them. But now they're in their 20s. Like
Yeah.
they're finding their identity, and I'm having to let go of the reins, because I did kind of take this like parental role with them a lot of the times, just because there was such an age difference. And I had to kind of adjust like my position with them
Yeah.
and get into this more of a sister role and all this stuff. So it's been a fluid thing that I'm still ongoing with a lot of them. And then friends, I will say, was I think the hardest one I had to do, because you talked about just showing up, wanting to be the best friend and
Yes.
everything, because there is this level of like acceptance from your friends and that you crave. And I think I started to realize I have certain friends with certain things.
Mhm.
And just because we were friends for this long doesn't mean that we're in the same page anymore, same place.
Exactly.
And I think I talked about it with one of my good friends, that I was like, I right now don't have time for people who guilt trip me. I was like,
I love
I
that.
don't have time for that. Like
Snaps.
I
Snaps.
am, and it's nothing against them, because I was like, I want to label that like, you miss me.
Yeah.
I miss you too. But I was like, I think there's a level too of me saying, I'm not the friend that is going to show up to everything.
Yeah.
I'm not in that stage of my life. I am in a very career focused stage of my life, and maybe I can get back into that space, and I'll let you know it when I am, and I will be there. And then also kind of filtering out like, hey, like you vocalizing when it's like an emergency, you saying like, hey, I need to talk to you. And I will say like, give me till then, like you being clear too when you need me, because I want to still be able to show up for you,
Right.
but you need to vocalize what's going on. You can't just call me once and then leave it at that, because
Right.
I won't be calling back.
Yeah.
I'm a horrible texter. I also label that too. Call me.
Me too.
Call
me
me
too.
I said horrible texter. And it's funny because my partner knows this about me. I put my stuff on read receipts because I was like, if I read it and haven't responded to you, I forgot. So text me again or call me.
Oh,
So I was
like
like,
that.
I equipped him with like the tools to, you have to equip people.
Yeah.
And you can't not talk about it. You can't not talk about like the adjustments you're making, the energy levels you were at in that certain space, you crashing out and saying, hey, I don't have this capacity anymore because I burned myself out because I
So
wasn't clear.
bad.
And yeah, I think too, that point, I think there's also boundaries of people who, you know, people you've had to like cut off
Oof. Yeah, that don't respect your boundaries.
that don't respect you, that don't respect your boundaries, that could be dangerous, could be this, like you having to kind of have all these avenues of what it looks like. Because I've had that with a family member, I've had that with like a friend turned
Yeah.
but it's you just have to get to this space of where I'm setting up stuff where I don't necessarily even need to like vocalize what I'm doing with the wrong person,
absolutely.
because you talk about narcissists, you talk about people who are harmful, you talk about people who just aren't doing what's best for you.
Yeah.
You can just set up an internal boundary for those people where you're like, nope, like this is not
This is
I don't
not
need
it.
to have that
My
conversation.
bouncer says, not today.
Yeah, a bouncer says this person won't hear you and you deserve to be respected.
Right. And I love kind of where we're going with this, because I think a big point I want to touch on, and a big piece of acceptance, it kind of sounds like in both of our stories, is your boundaries might upset somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
You will hurt feelings.
Yeah.
You will disappoint. And the acceptance is, I'm okay with that. I have to be okay with that. I mean, you know, we're not saying, there's a difference between me saying like, hey, Taylor, you're kind of in my space. Could you scoot back a smidge? And me saying, hey, bitch, get off my seat.
Get off my porch.
Right? We still have to be respectful. And that's what we'll talk about in kind of more of episode 2, is like how to set boundaries and make them respectful and all of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you're being respectful, you could still be the most respectful, loving, kind, compassionate person, and that boundary could still really piss somebody else off.
Oh, yeah. I think it's, I like that you said that, because there is a level of that you can, I'll divulge just a little bit here, because you can set a boundary, validate someone getting hurt by it. Like, I know that this is probably hard because I haven't been this way before,
Yeah.
but I am getting this way and this is what I'm wanting. Like, you can validate an emotion, but don't validate their behavior of not respecting you.
Right.
You
Beautiful.
can validate one thing without the other. Like, if you have someone in front of you that you're truly trying to accomplish something with and foster like respect between, you can validate emotions in that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't validate their behaviors of crossing your boundary.
Right.
Don't apologize.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We wanted to get into that. What did we say? Oh, that's in the second one. God damn. We are some solution girlies over here. We just love the solution.
I think I said that. That's one of my modalities.
Do you know what it is? Is it's like, as we're talking about this, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know if that's the same for you.
We did just like self-disclose. I was sweating.
I'm sweating too, but I'm uncomfortable because that is how intense boundaries feel to me. They feel so uncomfortable. And I think I'm so quick to be like, but let me tell you all the good parts.
Yeah.
Like, there are good parts, but I can't say this loud enough. I love saying that now. I forgot what I was going to say.
You were talking about kind of there are the good parts. And I think
they work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do. And it's uncomfortable because it's change. It's change for you. But I think the after effects is where you're going to feel it the most. Like you said, give it a few weeks, days. Like, it might be a few months, and it might be uncomfy because you miss a dynamic, and it's better to be with the devil you know than the one you don't. Like,
huge.
So it's we sometimes sit in discomfort because it's what we know. And that's unfair to you, and you're never going to truly be okay or be like vulnerable. Like,
Right.
I feel like, to that point too, you brought up these words. We're not looking for you to be nice kind, people pleasing anymore. We're looking for y'all to be this vulnerable person that can be truly and authentically compassionate, because you are being fake nice and fake kind when you're not respecting yourself.
Right.
Because that's not the way it goes.
Well, and it's also like respecting yourself. It's also respecting other people, because how, like in my situation where I was being I did disrespect people by not being honest.
Yeah.
That
Honest
is
to your relationship.
yeah. And like I love the point that you kind of like named earlier. Well, you didn't name it, but we talked about it earlier, and it's kind of on one of your points over here is
Yeah.
the good relationships, the people that should be in your life, that love you, that well, I don't want to say love you, because there are people that might act a different way that still love you. Trusting that your relationships can survive discomfort.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. I will say people don't have talks like this regularly because they're like, oh, the relationship's bad. I'm like, no. I feel like with me and my partner, we just talked about this too, of we talk regularly on uncomfy topics, and we never have fights because of that, because we are constantly challenging each other. We are constantly bringing up uncomfy topics. It's also dating a therapist, though, I feel like, too. Or sneak peek there.
Sneak peek of that one. Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But I think that's also dating a therapist, because I think I told him in the very first date, I was like, I hate surface level bullshit. So I was like, if we're going to talk about the weather, I'm going to.
Yeah. I'm going to leave.
I'm going to hit it.
That's my
I'm
boundary.
going to hit on it.
Boundary.
Boundary.
And I don't think we've ever really, in all of this stuff, in our last 3 episodes, I'm like, I don't think we've ever done this in literally 3 episodes.
We're just, pros at
We're-
this point.
exactly.
Sorry if you heard my dog barking. There's obviously someone at the door, but
Don't apologize. That's not in your control.
He was emotionally activated
Yeah.
because he's our bouncer was protecting us.
Oh, what a baby. I love him.
If you know Drogon,
He's the best.
Big beefy.
But what I was going to say on this topic of discomfort and boundaries is, guys, healing is actually expanding our tolerance and ability to be uncomfortable. Yeah. Healing is not the discomfort goes away, we never see it again, the pain disappears. Healing is, I can now tolerate and expand my capacity for discomfort.
Yep.
And that is healing.
Yeah, building up resiliency, building up just how you can live authentically is, I think, the main goal that I want y'all to think on and just reflect on. It's unauthentic.
Yep.
When you move through things and you're allowing yourself to be a certain way, you're putting on a mask. And I guess we're just asking you to take that off and show people who you truly are.
Right. And maybe before you take it off, right, ask it what it's really scared of and why it's needs to be on your face in the first place. Like, if I take you off, what am I scared of? If this mask comes off, am I scared that people are going to reject me? Am I scared that people aren't going to like me? Am I scared that people are going to be mad at me?
And I think that's the hard thing too, is I wish I could say that that's not the case.
Yeah.
But I think to that point is it might be, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, what is better, taking care of you or taking care of just everyone else, taking care of the world? Because I do know there's like family dynamics, cultural aspects. There's so many layers to it.
So many. Trauma.
Trauma. And I just want to acknowledge that. But at the same time, what you're doing now is you're setting the precedence of how your life is going to be lived.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, if you're not in the space where boundaries are a thing for you yet, or this is a totally new, like your mind is just like, what is this? That's okay. Same, right?
Absolute same.
We're learning with you. And in no way am I want to be 100% authentic with even you guys and just saying like, hey, I'm preaching on something that I'm still learning too.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay too. Because this is a hard thing to master. And I actually don't think that word is even acceptable. I don't think you can ever master boundaries.
Yeah, I think you can be a guru.
Yes, a guru. Fluid. I like that you said that. I love the
Flexible.
fluidity. Yeah, we don't have to be rigid. We don't have to be porous. We can be fluid right in the middle. They can move, they can bend, they can change.
Because I think that's where I'm trying to get to, because I think there was a point, like we talked about kind of where we were standing with ours, but I would kind of fluctuate, and I didn't know to kind of where to lie, because I felt like I was porous with some people and then rigid with some. Like it's just you seeing what kind of, I almost said trigger. I almost seeing what activates me and then saying why. But of course, like I didn't know any of this until I started my work. And then I was like, okay, I'm literally teaching this. Let me practice what I freaking preach.
Yes, practicing what you preach.
And
It's
I
a
will
hard one.
say, as a therapist, I literally call myself the gray area. I'm constantly in the gray area of like
that.
what is going on in this relationship, what your viewpoint is, what's mine, and I literally see it play out.
Yeah.
And I will say this too, I'm definitely not perfect with it. I can have, a parent come up in front of me, and this is why therapists don't, therapize their own family, because
Right.
I have a bias filter whenever I have someone in front of me that has activated me before, I have a history with, even I talked about too, like sometimes a few drinks in and I'm there and I'm emotionally activated by this person. And
Right.
I've been like, okay, I've even had to set a boundary of like, I can't drink with certain people
Mm.
because I don't feel comfortable, or I have
Right.
like emotions that come up that I haven't necessarily processed. And that was a big disclosure, but
I love that.
I was like, it's real. Like, so you just having to navigate things that you do and how you interact with people, and then moving on with yourself, like, and moving forward with that.
Like kind of as you're speaking on that, what's coming up for me is thinking about areas that I have not, like areas where I have not respected boundaries, which there have been those, right? And one example that came to mind, and this probably, again, my husband's going to laugh when he hears this, and probably a lot of my friends, which to my friends, my family, my husband, I'm sorry that I've done this to you, but I have definitely crossed boundaries when I have tried to therapize people when they didn't ask for it.
Yeah. Ooh.
Ooh, just because I'm like, well, I'm a therapist, and this was my early days, okay? And my like little crash out period. But where I'm a therapist and I'm going to tell you something that I see, but you didn't ask for. Huge boundary violation.
Yeah.
Like that is so uncalled for.
But I get that. I do.
Because it's so hard to like switch that on and off. But I definitely, that's an area where, yeah, I've crossed boundaries too. It's not just like you have to be able to equally acknowledge that you're setting boundaries. You also have to know how to respect other people's boundaries.
Yeah.
Us included.
I agree. I think that's as much as we're talking about setting boundaries. So when you hear it, I guess when you hear it, I'm trying to think of an example of someone setting a boundary with me. I've definitely been like had like relationships that didn't work. You know, I think to this point I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast. I will say this like really cute, simple example. I had a patient with me. Actually, I don't even think it was a patient. I think it was during like my school days. So it was just a kiddo I worked with.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there and we're talking, and this kid had some trauma in his past. And y'all have seen it on the podcast. I'm very handsy. I'm very like, this. And I was so fucking proud of this 9-year-old to be like, hey, like you move a lot.
Yeah.
And it kind of keeps me on edge. I think I asked like, hey, like I'm noticing you're sitting very tense. I think I reflected back there. He was like, I noticed you're kind of tense. He's like, yeah, you move a lot. And he's like, I don't think you're going to hit me. Like, I know you're not going to hit me, but it just does I have like a reaction to it. And of course it was like, humbled my ass. Like I was like, okay, I need to be freaking aware of this when working with kids and like when working with trauma and my capacity to just be super moving. So I was super proud of him because I like was like, sit on your hands and don't you dare like even give any guilt or guilt or shame. Not to say that I was doing that, but don't look upset. I was like, don't look like shocked or surprised. I'd be like, oh yeah, like I wanted to kind of just normalize him advocating for that, because him moving through that like for the rest of his life is going to be a thing.
So what I want to ask though is like, because I love that you're, of course, I know especially as therapists, I've been there before where a client has told me something that bothers them or that they don't necessarily like that I do.
Yeah.
And the reason I said, ooh, is because my little people pleaser would start bawling.
Yeah.
She would be like, oh my God, I'm the worst person in the world.
Activated this 9-year-old.
Right. So while you were like validating and like normalizing this beautiful moment with this client, I want like, what did it feel like on the inside?
I think it was, luckily I had that moment of like, don't you make a face, don't you? I was like, don't, because this is so powerful. I had a moment, again, when we're in those sessions too, I'm very good at like checking my shit at the door.
Sure.
So I was in the headspace of like, I can be unbiased. I can do this.
Yeah.
Like I can, don't you dare show anything on your face. You like put your hands, like be like, yes, absolutely. And I didn't apologize for my moving though. Like I was like,
Good.
I literally was like, oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Like that. Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate you being vulnerable because now we can actually have an authentic,
Yeah.
connection because you've been on edge. And mind you, this was like our third or fourth session, so we've been going through, and so it was powerful. And
And how
I will say on the other end, I probably in a situation with a person that I'm either in a relationship with or just someone closer where I have a little bit more emotional involvement. It's hard to hear those things, but you also I think I look at it now as they are trying to improve our dynamic. And especially if there's been something that's been off and someone's like, hey, this, this, this. And I've had that happen with friends.
Yeah.
I've had that be like, hey, you used to show up all the time because that's where I was like talked about the honesty of like where I'm at now. And I was like, I should have been like more vocal. Like I should have been like, this is kind of happening. And kind of finding that middle ground. But like I think looking at it from their perspective is a lot easier for me now being a therapist.
Yeah.
But still kind of comes up and has me kind of think inward of what's going on, if I can make any changes, if I have that capacity to make those changes. Because to that point, sometimes you don't. And sometimes you can't show up as much. And sometimes you need to say like, hey, like I can't show up for you this way, or I can work on that, or I really struggle with that.
Yeah.
And then allowing them to make their adjustments, because to the point I made before, they have to assess now if they can maintain that friendship, maintain
Right.
that relationship.
Right.
So it's both a two-way street for sure. And it does take an ego blow sometimes. Your pride
Yeah.
comes out.
Love that.
I will say pride and ego, I think, play the most for me because I don't necessarily have a people pleaser anymore. I think I shedded that after like a long childhood of doing that.
Wow.
And now it's sometimes pride and ego can come in the way. And I think I just have to constantly be like, is this my pride talking? Because
Ooh, I
that's
love
not going
that.
to perpetuate or foster a healthy relationship.
I love just like having this conversation and getting to, I almost feel like I get to experience the same scenarios, but in your world, right? And you kind of get to hear them from mine, and just like the insight to say like, I don't necessarily have a people pleaser, but I have a this, right? I think is really, that's really cool.
Not saying that she's not there.
Right.
She's there
She's a little
sometimes.
quieter than mine.
She's
though.
she's a lot quieter. I think when it comes to boundary setting, it's like my pride that
I
comes
like
up.
that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I know. I'm still sweating though.
Me too. Well, this one was last week was not really any self-disclosure. Sorry,
I know this. And that is the beauty of this, is that's why this is for us to kind of self-reflect, but also be vulnerable and be honest with you guys, so y'all can have that capacity too of saying, hey, let me check my shit.
Right.
And that's, hey, where do I need boundaries? Where have I ignored them with others? Because it's going to be both. You can't just set boundaries and then not accept other people's boundaries. You have to kind of find that dynamic, because if you don't respect others, you're not going to authentically set your own.
And this is like a little sidebar here, but I just love the dialogue that we're kind of having, or at least what you stated about your client is if you tell your therapist that something's making you uncomfortable, or like you're not vibing, or you don't like that they're doing something, you can ask.
Oh, yeah.
You can speak up and say like, hey, I don't like this, or hey, I need more of this, or hey, this is kind of, and it's the same thing as the relationships we're talking about right now. Obviously they're very different, but it's still a relationship.
Yeah, it's a therapeutic relationship.
Yeah.
And it's important to, I know we talked about it last time, be honest in our last episode. Like, your therapist isn't going to have all the tools to help you navigate things if you're not open and honest.
Right. And then this is a beautiful example of, I'm sorry, were you going to say something else? No. Okay. Beautiful example of a scenario of a boundary. Like if we're looking at it like therapy and client, and I've heard so many people say, well, I just don't like my therapist, or, I didn't vibe with her. She didn't do this. She didn't do that. And I'm like, well, did you ever tell her or him? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, there's the issue. Maybe not the whole issue, right? Maybe you really don't like this
Yeah.
person. Maybe they didn't vibe with you. Maybe that's all true. But I really want to encourage you guys to like say something.
Yeah, because I think that's the difference between that rigid, where it's like, did you advocate for your needs? Did you say something? Did you try to set a boundary and then it was ignored? Because then that's like, hey, there's a step-by-step thing before you get to the point where it's like fight or flight or avoidance or run
Right.
away. Like you can have these kind of, this is what this looks like.
Yeah.
So it can, because I will say all the time, when you lean into that like disengage, when you lean into that run away, it might feel good for a moment, but what you're doing is you are going to have either that maybe uncertainty, that question mark. You're like, did I, you might question yourself. But when you
Right.
have those like kind of steps, you're like, nope, I did this.
Yep.
I can look back and be like, I did what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's something freeing in that.
And healing.
And healing in that. I'll
Ugh.
say like in romantic relationships, I think every single one I've like passed like recently, I've been like, no, like there's no question marks anymore. Like
Yeah.
I don't have question marks because it got to this point. It's like X, Y, Z, cross T's, dot I's. Good. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
And I think there's something freeing in that.
And that's like where we're trying to go with this, right?
Yeah.
It is freeing to the very thing that you are probably most scared of doing or uncomfortable with doing is going to be one of the most healing things for you.
Yeah.
And I did also want to kind of like mention in here, we're talking strictly relationships right now, like interpersonal relationships. In no way are we talking about like any sort of like traumas or, kind of when we're saying this accountability level, we're not talking about traumatic experiences or, if something like really terrible happened to you and, maybe you didn't say something or, we are not talking about that at all.
Yeah.
We're strictly talking about just interpersonal relationships. So just a little disclosure I wanted to give.
Yeah. No worries. I think too, like your point, like that's the level. We're at very surface level right now.
Surface.
We're
Yeah.
at the surface level of boundaries.
Right.
Obviously, like as you go higher or things like that, like I talked about, dangerous. Like there's like
Yes.
so many other, like there's further out.
Looks
Like,
a little different.
it
than
looks
kind
a
of
lot
what we're
different.
saying.
And that's where I said that's where it comes inward. But I think, to that point, we want you to just know what it looks like, what it feels like on the end of like, I'm not in tune with this.
Mhm.
And now for the next episode, we are going to get you in tune with it.
Right.
So we are going to kind of shed light on what it looks like to set those boundaries with others internally,
Mhm.
and we can go dive a little bit deeper, into maybe what it looks like to set it in those dangerous spaces if we need to. And then, exploring that healthy side and that curiosity.
Yeah, giving some examples, giving some scenarios. Maybe I throw back my banana scenario. I
The
love that.
fucking
I
banana.
love that banana.
My ass still hurts.
Yeah, her ass still hurts, but yeah, we'll give you a little bit more. We'll kind of walk you
in
out
part
of it.
2.
In part 2.
And it's funny because we will be wearing the same shit because we're just going to take a potty break and then come right back because this is, we want it to feel fluid.
And authentic.
Authentic. But stay unhinged, besties. We'll catch you on the next side. Go assess where your boundaries might need to be. Where are you at on the spectrum? And go ahead and maybe get ready. Listen to this podcast. Listen to, a few more if you want to keep exploring boundary work. And stay unhinged.
Yeah. And go introduce yourself to a bouncer. And
Be
ask,
like, or just give them a good nod.
Yeah.
Say like, hey,
I know what you're doing.
thank you for setting the boundary here.
Right. Thank you for the boundary guarding. And yeah, maybe just take a minute. Do some thinking, guys. And we'll catch you soon.
On the other side.
Bye.
Bye.